That's true.
Some
it's
people
like
do like
tea and lemon juice or something.
Yeah, like
They make fun of that.
Lemonade.
They make fun of that in the office.
We have people doing like,
Hi, I'm Mike, and today I am joined by Molly of DIVAS. And this is interview 2 of Ride for Freedom. So let's start off. Molly, how are you today?
I'm doing good.
Great. Can you tell us all a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Molly. I am the services director for the DIVAS program, where we work in the women's prison in South Burlington. We're a nonprofit organization under the Vermont Network Against Domestic Violence, and we are contracted with the Vermont Department of Corrections to provide services to domestic and sexual assault survivors and human trafficking survivors.
Okay, and how does that kind of look?
So, like a day-to-day?
Yeah, day-to-day.
That's always a fun question to answer because it's always super different.
It's super different every single day.
Every day is like very kind of, not unpredictable necessarily, but you have to kind of like pivot on a moment's notice sometimes. Okay. So a lot of times we just, we get referral slips from the women while they're inside, and they request to be seen either individually or in a group setting. We offer groups, so we do drop-in, pretty informal sessions. Like last week we watched like a TED Talk and talked about like, self-compassion. So I come with an idea every week, and then the women will kind of, take it or leave it, and we'll run with it. We also have curriculum-based groups, like Beyond Violence and Healing Trauma, where they go through a curriculum designed to be like tailored towards incarcerated women and the pathways they've experienced to incarceration. And so that is usually a 6 or 12-week program, and then they get a certificate at the end of that.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And what does DIVAS stand for?
Discussing intimate violence and accessing support.
Great. And this is a female-based organization. And can you tell us a little bit about the kind of history of incarceration for females in Vermont? Is there like a kind of a path that is commonly seen?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look at the men and women's populations of incarcerated people, they tend to have different pathways to incarceration. For women, it's usually like a lifetime of trauma, mental health issues, or substance abuse issues. And for women, typically the crimes are nonviolent. So you'll see a lot of what we call gender survival crimes, where women are committing crimes to basically like stay safe, stay alive, or to support their families. So we have women in for check fraud, or for stealing diapers, or things related to substance use that is connected to domestic and sexual violence and human trafficking. A lot of times it always comes back down to trauma. That seems to be the common thread. You could probably say like 100% of the women that we work with, but also that are incarcerated. That's not an official number, but yeah, it can be extrapolated.
And when you go into the jails, are you teaching them about kind of where they are at this point? So it's like this trauma has happened, this unfortunate circumstance has happened, you're in jail now, and now where do you go? Or is it about trying to understand the past?
Right. So our program doesn't provide therapy or like clinical services. Okay. We provide emotional support and like the group work. But so when people come to us, by the time they're with us, they have either, well, in Vermont, it's a little bit of a different system where all of our prisons and jails are housed in the same buildings because I think because our population is so small. Okay. So we work with people who are either being detained like bail, or with like a bail hearing. Or people who are doing like lifelong sentences. So there isn't like a difference really in the population in that regard. And then when they come to us, it's usually on a voluntary basis. Our program is totally voluntary. So they'll send us a slip, and we'll call them down from their units, and we'll end up talking about everything from a sexual assault they may have experienced as a child to like release planning for them getting like planning to get out, and like how to support them, and like what their needs are when they are back in the community. Right. So it's not a lot of deep diving into like trauma necessarily. Right. But we do have resources to help them navigate those things like while they're incarcerated and on the outside.
That's great. And how long has DIVAS been around for?
So I should know this better, but I think 18 years.
18 years?
Yeah. Through many iterations. And now we are in a place where we have 2 full-time staff who kind of rotate doing the direct service, myself and Kylan Vayu, who's our director. And she also runs the transitional services program.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And what kind of inspired you? I mean, this is such a heavy topic, and it's a lot, and there's such a chance of burnout and all those things. What inspired you to get involved with this?
Yeah, that's a great question, and something I think I've become more comfortable answering the longer I've done this work.
Yeah.
I started as an intern with Vermont Works for Women, which is like a worker readiness program, and they have a program in the prison. So I did an internship with them when I was in undergrad. And I learned that I really wanted to work with incarcerated women because there wasn't much about my life or my history that I understood to that point that was that much different than the women I was working with. And I always really wanted to know what was different. Why was I on one side of the table and they were on the other? Why was I leaving the prison and going home to my dog and my cats and my safe home and my loving family? Like, how did I get to that point and they were where they were? Because my life up to that point had been very similar. So that was the driving force for me to try to figure out and understand those differences, because ultimately we're not that different at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just kind of, one separating.
Yeah, and like what are the diverging pathways
that
lead to certain
it's like thinking about like how life is so circumstantial, and if you're put into those situations, it's just it goes down a path and it's almost like you can't help it. Yeah, absolutely. And just it's become like an obsession of mine of trying to understand like what the divergence was for me. Yeah. Cool. Let's talk about the positive change. Yeah. What have you seen in terms of positive change since you have been involved with DIVAS? Yeah, that's a... And you can talk either personal experience or you can talk in the state of Vermont, if you've noticed any positive changes happening, say in the past 5 years, towards either the awareness of incarcerated women or legislator, really any way you want to take it for that one. Yeah, in terms of big picture. I think there's a lot of good things that have happened, a lot of positive changes. I've been with the DIVAS program, I'm going on my 3rd year, and we have done a lot of relationship building with the Department of Corrections, which has, I think, in turn, ultimately, hopefully helped survivors. I think sometimes we are aligning ourselves with the ultimate goal to make sure that we can provide the best support for survivors. And so now with the Department of Corrections, we have a really wonderful working relationship where they know they can call us if there's ever somebody who's really struggling, and if we come to them with ideas, they're usually like very supportive and just tell us to run with it. So that's been great because there's really been no barrier. No pushback or anything like that. Yeah, so that's been really awesome. And then I think programmatically, we've also had a lot of successes with like just different ideas. So we started developing a donation boutique. So when the women are leaving jail, let me back up a little bit. When they are arrested, a lot of times they lose everything. So when they're leaving jail, they're going back out onto the street with, if they're arrested in July. Lose their jobs, lose their homes. Exactly. Yeah. So if they're arrested in July, they're getting out in December in flip-flops, and that's not going to work. I didn't even think about that. Even clothing and basic amenities. They lose everything. Yeah, because then they can't pay rent, so they get evicted and all these things. So we developed a donation boutique where community members from the greater Burlington area are donating their clothing items to the DIVAS program basically, and then we worked with DOC to develop a storage space in the building, so that when women are leaving, we can try to pull together a few outfits for them so that they're not going back onto the street with nothing. So that's, it's something, it's not everything, but it's a little bit of security, I guess. And then the other thing that we've done, Kylan really got the transitional program off the ground. That was kind of her baby when she was in grad school, and
really turned it into a.
How long's Kylan been involved?
I
General.
think 6-ish years.
6 years. Okay.
Yeah. And so that program has really kind of like taken on a life of its own, and now we're able to provide cell phones for survivors getting out, which for human trafficking survivors is kind of like one of the most paramount like basic needs that they need to get by on the street, and have some safety and independence. So that's been huge. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Cool. And can you share a personal story where you've actually like felt kind of that, like, you know, that feeling in your heart that's like, this is why I do this? Do you have a story that you're willing to share?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can come up with a personal kind of story off the top of my head, or, you know, without kind of risking anonymity.
Right.
But I think the thing that brings, I actually tell the women this on a regular basis, the thing that gets me out of bed to go to work every day is the resilience that I see that they have. You know, these are people who have experienced some of the worst things you could possibly imagine, and they still manage to take care of themselves and get out of bed every day, and they're still there for their fellow community members. And that's pretty intoxicating to see that, you know, when people have been beaten down by their loved ones, by their families, by their friends, by the systems that they live in, and then they still are able to like show up in our office with a smile and crack some jokes and be there for each other is amazing. And I think we talk a lot about burnout in this profession, and it's very real. But I think something that happens a lot, instead of like the vicarious trauma you experience through this work, is the vicarious resilience. So I take that home with me all the time.
Sometimes hardship is the best way to see humanity in someone. I think that's great. And my last question, is there any way we all can help you? Is there a place to donate, website that we can go just to learn more?
Yeah, so we actually don't have a direct website. We are under the Vermont Network Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, so any donations could probably just go directly to them. But I want to give a shout out to Ashley Messier and the Women's Justice and Freedom Initiative. She's she has done this work in the community forever, and I would highly recommend checking out her organization and getting involved with them, or like donating to her directly, because she does on the ground frontline work with survivors.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Molly, thank you for doing this interview, and thank you for doing what you do. And please tell Colin the same thing. It's really wonderful what you do, and all of us with Ride for Freedom are super inspired. And the whole reason we were doing this trip is to get face to face with all these people that are creating positive change.
Yeah.
And it's great sitting down and be able to learn some of this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you for listening to Ride for Freedom interview number 2. Cut.
Oh my god,
Yeah.
I don't think I breathed during that whole time.
That was really good. You did so great. That was